Good morning and Merry Christmas. This is the sixth day of the 11th month in the 16th year of Chungi, and this is the King's Sports News Hour. Tim Elder sitting in for the second King of Cheongji Moon, and I hope that you are all planning to or having a wonderful Christmas day today, 2025. Let's go right to the kingdom and what is going on around the kingdom in terms of the weather right now. Quite mild in Chongqing, Tennessee, 54 degrees and mostly cloudy. Mostly cloudy and warm with areas of drizzle, feeling more like spring than Christmas, it says. 67 degrees for a high today. That is quite nice. And tonight, cloudy with a couple of showers, low at 55. However, quite a different situation in Father's hometown of Cheongju, North Pyongan Province, in what is now North Korea. It is currently 7 degrees with a real feel of 13 below zero Fahrenheit. And seven, and then tonight getting down to right now, it's 7 degrees above zero Fahrenheit, but it's going to get down to 8 degrees below zero Fahrenheit tonight. And that is, I think, around 25 degrees, minus 25 degrees on the Celsius scale. So that is quite dangerous. And of course, people in North Korea have, especially in rural parts of North Korea, have very little recourse in terms of heat. So I'm afraid that this is actually a life and death situation for many people there. I'm afraid in Cheongju. Tomorrow, a little bit better, cold with plenty of sunshine, high of 17 degrees. And then at the Tonygoon Palace in northeast of Pennsylvania, mostly clear at 30 degrees right now. Clouds breaking for some sun, breezy this afternoon, high of 45. 17 degrees for low tonight, partly cloudy. And then at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas, 63 degrees and mostly cloudy, getting up to 77 today, breezy and very warm with more sun than clouds, feeling more like spring than Christmas. Tonight, clear to partly cloudy, a low of 62. And then at the Suncheon Palace in Korea, currently 32 degrees, 17 for a low tonight, breezy this evening, otherwise clear to partly cloudy and much colder. Tomorrow, plenty of sunshine, but cold, high of 34. At the Gunma Palaces in Japan, currently 46 and cloudy, mostly cloudy, occasional rain and drizzle this evening, followed by a shower late, 42. Tomorrow, occasional morning rain and drizzle, otherwise mostly cloudy, breezy, and cooler, high of 46. Guangzhou, Guangdong Province, clear in 54, cool there. And then tonight, a low of 49, and tomorrow, partly sunny and a high of 60. So rather cool, shall we say. Maybe the people there will think of it as being cold there in southern China. All right, let's go to Father's Word. Let's see here. Okay. And, excuse me. In the book on the root of the universe, chapter 3, the fall of human beings and restoration. Excuse me. Yeah, got something there going on. It's probably some of the dust or something coming out of the book. Anyway, I was reading as I was preparing for this evening's broadcast, I was reading an article on, archaeologists are all, or anthropologists, I guess, are trying to, find out the origin of human beings and so forth. And now the theory is that there were actually two populations that split and then 100,000 years later came back together. And it just all happened something like a million years ago. So so the Bible, of course, says that Adam or God blew his breath into Adam. In other words, gave Adam a spirit self. And of course, at some point, God created, and Father, of course, uh, the Father, is not saying that okay, well these populations got together and everything like that, but he's saying that uh, there was actually a God created Adam, um, but you can have intermarriage between different populations for a certain, right? And there can be, there probably is evolution on a micro scale. In other words, within the human species, there could be evolution. In other words, there can be changes. Just we don't, of course, and Father teaches very strongly against the idea that somehow primates or uh, evolved into human beings, and this is something that has never been proven. You don't, fish don't or frogs don't grow legs and become tigers or anything like that. So that's an important distinction. But anyway, they keep trying to find exactly how human beings came to be, and I think that's a good thing, as long as they are not motivated by political agenda, which they may be. But anyway, um, I'll tell you one thing we do know is that we did not evolve from a homosexual couple. That much I think we do know. I think I think anthropologists would agree with that. They talk about interbreeding or something like that, which involves what, male and female, right? cannot cannot evolve from a homosexual couple. That at least that much seems to be uh, established. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Where are we? We're in chapter 3. Root of the Universe, Chapter 3, The Fall of Human Beings and Restoration is the title of Chapter 3. That's how I got off on that Adam and Eve thing. Um, and let's see here. This is uh, here. This is October 13th, 1995, and we may have covered this before. So, 에덴 동산에 있는 자들은 보면 여자는 하나밖에 없습니다. So, Eden, of course, is the Korean word for Eden, and Tongsan means garden. Basically, it's a garden. Yeah, okay, that's a good translation. Cha. So the cha that were in the Garden of Eden, cha, um, here normally it'd be used to mean persons. Excuse me, I had because of my sneeze just a moment ago, I have to blow my nose. I'm going to mute myself and turn away here. All right. Yeah. Would have been bad form for me to start running my nose here. Okay. All right. Well, before we were interrupted. So 인동산인 자들을 so cha is normally human beings, but he's including God in this situation. So he's saying that there's only one female in the Garden of Eden. Only one female in the Garden of Eden. And there's just one female, but then there were three archangels. There was Adam, and also God is male. Okay. So aside from God, there were four male figures surrounding one female, and so there was an issue that had to be warned against. There was an issue that had to be warned against. And then the father says, "선악과는 fruit of good and evil." 여자의 생식기를 말하는 것입니다. So the term, the fruit of good and evil refers to the sexual organs of the woman, right? Sexual organs of the woman. You know, and Father, I remember him saying that it wasn't just one time that God gave the commandment. It wasn't just one time. It was repeated because he was very concerned about what could happen, what might happen. And of course, the fall was not predestined. There was no predestination there. And even after the fall happened, there were fail-safe measures that could have been taken. You know, as long as Adam maintained his position, then things could have been corrected fairly quickly. And then, you know, as long as Cain didn't kill Abel, then the situation could have been corrected you know, fairly quickly there. And Noah, you know, Ham, you know, and so forth and so forth and so on. Um, but we are here today. We are here today. And fortunately, today, we stand on the foundation of the victory of Jesus, who was born, or who's, I'm sorry, who was not born today, but whose birth we do celebrate today, along with the most of the world. Of course, you know, the Eastern Orthodox Church has a different date, and that comes in about a week or plus, right? I'm not sure exactly when it is. I think it's a week or two. I think it's early January that they celebrate Christmas because they use the Julian calendar, not the Gregorian calendar. Anyway, that's okay. But most of the world celebrates the birth of Jesus today. Even countries like Japan and Taiwan, where there is an extremely small Christian population, there are Christmas carols being, you know, the music can be heard in those countries as well, which I think is a wonderful thing. And so let's not take away from that. Okay. Praise God, praise God, praise God. So I hope that you all have a wonderful Christmas and that it is focused on celebrating the birth of Jesus. And, you know, despite all that happened or didn't happen 2,000 years ago, it certainly can be said that uh, the birth of Jesus marked an important turning point, shall we say, or an important development in human history, and that is why the whole world, by the way, sets its calendar on, you know, to begin at the supposed birth of Jesus. Of course, there again, it's the people who set the calendar thought that they were putting year one at the on the year that Jesus was born, but more recently, biblical scholars have figured out that actually they got it wrong, and Jesus was born sometime between 4 and 6 BC, not in the year 1 AD, which is what they thought. The calendar makers thought that they were, you know, putting the year one on the year that Jesus was born. But okay, that can all be corrected as we go along. But anyway, his birth certainly uh, marked an important turning point in human history. And we would not be here today if it were not for his birth and for his sacrifice, his difficult life, and his innocent sacrifice on the cross, and his victorious sacrifice on the cross, I would say, because it was his victory that led to the resurrection after his third day after his crucifixion. And without the resurrection, also, we would be in a very difficult situation today. All righty then. So, you know, traditional Christianity needs to be um, corrected, or shall we say, advised on certain things. But that's okay. That's okay. That'll all come in good time. In good time. Okay. All right. Let's see. I think I was going to start with some good news today. Yes. Yes. We really ought to start Christmas morning with good news, right? All right. So, crime drops at record rate in Trump's America. This is the best I could do in terms of good news. I'm sorry. It's okay. It's good, right? President Donald Trump's administration is forcing down the huge crime waves overseen by Presidents Barack Obama and Joe Biden, according to a crime report posted by Axios.com. Oh, what's this thing on the right there? Oh, come, you got to be kidding me. Let's try to get it off. Okay. U.S. murderers on pace for largest one-year drop on record, said Axios' coverage of the data collected by the Real-Time Crime Index site, which compiles data from 570 law enforcement agencies. The site shows almost 7,300 murders during the 12 months up to October 2025, compared to 8,852 in the 12 months before the May 2020 death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I see we're okay, 12 months to 12 months, all right. The murder rate spiked to 12,000 in the subsequent 12 months of Democratic cheerleading for a racial reckoning and Black Lives Matter. Trump's lower 2025 murder rate is below the 8,192 seen in the 12 months before April 2019. That record is saving the lives of thousands of Americans compared to Biden and Obama, who helped trigger a crime wave just before the 2014 midterm election by endorsing claims that police officers were shooting many African Americans. Of course, that was not true. Trump's emphasis on law and order, plus the nationwide crackdown on illegal migration, has also forced down auto theft by almost one quarter, murder by 20%, robbery by 18%, burglary by 15%, and violent crime by 10%. And the crime crackdown is helping push murder numbers back to the levels before the 1960s crime explosion. Since January, Trump's deputies have deported roughly 600,000 migrants, including many with long criminal records. His team has also helped persuade many other migrants to quietly go home. Right. And I think they didn't mention the deployment of a National Guard to some of the cities in America, but I think that also must have had an important or a significant effect. You have National Guard, people in uniforms, military uniforms, walking around um, uh, areas that normally have a lot of crime, and the criminals are going to say, I don't know, maybe we should take a vacation, or maybe we should, take our business elsewhere. Um, Probably take a vacation, or sort of. It's interesting how criminals think. They consistently blame the victim. Well, you should have known better, or you shouldn't have been there, wrong time, wrong place, or something like that. They have a way of justifying these things in their own mind. I remember watching the Sopranos, right, the series Sopranos, and in one place where Tony Soprano is forcing this company into bankruptcy so that he can sort of siphon off the assets, I guess it is, and the the owner of the company is weeping, and because he's been ruined and he's being left penniless. And Soprano turns to him and says, "Listen, this is what we do. This is what we do." That's his justification, which, of course, it's a fictional thing, and this was some script writer's version of what he figured a mafioso would say. But I think it is pretty accurate that they have all sorts of ways of justifying their crimes and blaming it on the victims. So anyway, what do we do? Well, don't put yourself in those situations, I think, is the best way to avoid crime. Because sometimes it's unavoidable, but as much as possible, we need to be smart about where we are. Check your bank accounts and credit card accounts and so forth frequently. I check my bank account daily, actually, on my app. And there was one time where I actually caught someone, um, and I think I already talked about it on the King's Report once, but someone in Michigan was using my debit card to make several purchases, and I immediately reported it to the bank. And after an investigation, they came back to me and said, "Yeah, you were right. These charges were not yours," and so I was fully compensated. So anyway, um, let's always be vigilant. Being vigilant, I think, is the important thing. Eventually, in Chonuguk, remember it's freedom and responsibility. So we do not just rely on the government to protect us. We rely on, even now, even today, I think we rely as much as we can on our own common sense and our own vigilance to protect ourselves, our families, and our communities. So, you know, I've always said the last years and years and years, I've been saying, uh, don't go to places where there are large crowds. Right. I think one of the stupidest places to be on New Year's Eve is Times Square. There hasn't been a major incident there so far, and I think that's really credit to the New York Police Department and others. But now, with Mamdani coming in, I'm not sure how I'm not sure how that's going to affect the security situation in New York City. Um, I would no one could pay me to be in Times Square on New Year's Eve. I think it's foolish to be there. What is the purpose of being there anyway? People, it's somehow uh, it's a party, I guess. I guess it's a party, and people tend to gravitate. So some people anyway tend to gravitate to parties. I don't. Maybe I have one of those avoidance personalities that the king talks about. But hey, listen, I predict that if people with avoidance personalities live longer than people who tend to gravitate to parties. Okay. All right. So where shall we go now? All right. So yeah, let's go to where was that thing here? Oh yeah, okay, I've already got it. All right. Now let's talk about nuclear submarines, nuclear powered submarines, which often carry nuclear weapons. But anyway, it's the nuclear powered the fact that is the important right now. Nuclear powered submarines, of course, can remain submerged much longer, and they're also quieter than the traditional diesel submarines, and so they are pretty potent weapons in times of war. And now, of course, now we see that South Korea is moving forward to build nuclear-powered submarines in cooperation with the United States. And so now, also in North Korea, we see that today. Oh, actually, this was on Wednesday, but North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un observed the test firing of a long-range surface-to-air missile shortly before visiting the construction of a nearly 9,000-ton nuclear-powered submarine on Wednesday. All right, so that's a pretty big submarine, if it's true. Kim remarked during his visit that South Korea planned to also build a nuclear-powered submarine, which would worsen global stability, according to South Korea's Yonhap news agency. Now, the North Koreans uh, said in March that they were going to build a nuclear-powered submarine, and South Korea has been trying to convince the United States to allow it to, or to help it, shall we say, help it to build a nuclear submarine for about 10 years now. And finally, just recently, at the end of October, I guess it was, when President Trump was in South Korea, um, the South Korean president sort of brought this up, and and Trump said, "Yeah, okay, we're gonna work with you on that." So now South Korea is also building nuclear-powered submarine. And apparently, there are 7 countries in the world right now that have nuclear-powered submarines. Of course, the U.S., China, Russia. See if I can name them all. U.S., China, Russia. That's 3. Um, and then um, UK, France, uh, India. Yes, India. And I'm missing one. Oh, I see. No, there are 6 right now, and South Korea would be the 7th. I think that's what I read. Okay, there are 6 right now. So basically, you're talking about the 5 members of the UN, the permanent members of the UN Security Council, plus India. So six countries right now have nuclear-powered submarines, and South Korea is trying to become number seven. And North Korea claims that it is also pushing forward with its uh, plan for a nuclear-powered submarine. We'll see what happens with North Korea. All right. And Newsweek reached out to the U.S. State Department. Okay. So North Korea continues to develop weapons despite UN sanctions on its nuclear and ballistic missile programs, both of which continue to prove a destabilizing force for the region. So how is it that North Korea is able to do this? Well, we already talked about, what is it this year? North Korea stole what is it for? Anyway, more than $3 billion in cryptocurrency, right? So come on, you guys. If you're going to do cryptocurrency, do not leave it on exchanges where and do not make yourself victims of cryptocurrency scams, especially these pig butchering scams, where this beautiful woman, in air quotes, forms a relationship with you, and and then at one point, some point in that relationship, says, "Oh, I've become rich because I invested in this asset or something like that in this scheme, and because I love you so much, I want to introduce you to it as well." And you put in, I don't know what, $10,000, and that money goes to to the North Korea nuclear missile program, or something like that. All right, so be careful. Oh boy, I tell you, people who lose their cryptocurrency that way, of course, deserve what they get in one aspect, but for the rest of us anyway, you're just contributing to North Korea's nuclear program. So knock it off. Anyway, so the Hermit Kingdom in October unveiled a missile allegedly capable of striking far-range targets, and including the United States, they say. Okay, so here, North Korea's state-run news agency published stunning photos of Kim touring the construction site of an 8,700-ton sub, flanked by workers and officials as they examined the vessel. So this is the vessel here. I guess this is Kim Jong-un, the officials here examining the vessel. Of course, if it is what they say it is, it's only the shell. And, the shell is probably the easiest part of the construction, but they have to build all the inside, and it's the inside stuff that actually matters. Well, and of course, they told Kim Jong-un that this is what he thinks it is, and he probably said good job, but I doubt that he actually saw the inside. So they may be deceiving him. The submarine is part of the country's effort to modernize its navy, which is just one of 5 key policies the ruling party is pushing to improve its defense capabilities. Now, come on, it's not defense. Defense against who? Okay, they claim that we have to defend against a possible invasion from the South Korea, but I think that's very unlikely. Even if North Korea had no military right now, I think it would probably be pretty controversial for South Korea to attempt to absorb North Korea at the moment, because that would be a huge economic burden on South Korea. Kim also oversaw the test of new missiles, which aim to improve the country's capability to produce new types of missiles. The one demonstrated has a reported range of up to 124 miles. Okay, so he's looking at missiles there. Okay. And during a stop at the submarine's construction site, he said that such developments would prove necessary in a world that is by no means peaceful. Well, thanks in part to him. He also claimed he had no choice but to develop one in the face of South Korea's plans to build a similar vessel, a threat to its security that must be countered. But North Korea started first, right? They've already got the shell. South Korea doesn't even have a shell yet. DPRK regards it as an offensive act, severely violating its security and maritime sovereignty, Kim told reporters. Okay, all right. So let's look at the South Korean situation right now. And it says here that South Korea and the U.S. agree to pursue standalone pact for a cooperation over nuclear-powered subs, plural there. And here, this is the head of the Office of National Security there in the presidential palace. And by the way, they've moved back to the Blue House, so we can now call it the Blue House. The president used to have for at least during Yoon's administration, actually had an office in Yongsan, but now they've moved back to the traditional presidential residence at the Blue House. South Korea and the United States have agreed to pursue a standalone agreement on cooperation for nuclear-powered submarines, with working-level talks expected to begin early next year, National Security Advisor Ri Sung-lak said Friday. And I think this Friday must be last Friday, because this is only Thursday. We made the remarks after returning from a week-long trip to the US, Canada, and Japan, where he held meetings with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who also serves as National Security Advisor, along with US Energy Secretary Chris Wright during his stay in Washington. He said the two sides held practical and in-depth consultations on security agreements, included in a joint fact sheet released last month following President Lee Jae-myung's summit with the US President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Gyeongju in late October. We shared the view that a standalone agreement on cooperation over nuclear-powered submarines is necessary and agreed to move forward with discussions, we told reporters. While Section 91 of the U.S. Atomic Energy Act bans the transfer of nuclear materials for military use, we said Seoul is seeking a U.S. exception or exemption by signing a separate agreement on nuclear-powered submarines, which would allow the U.S. president to authorize such transfers. Australia took a similar approach, signing a separate pact with Washington for its nuclear-powered submarine program, which, by the way, has not yet produced a submarine. And I think it's kind of being delayed, or it's not going according to original schedule, under the AUKUS security partnership. During discussions on uranium enrichment and reprocessing of spent nuclear fuel, we said he reaffirmed Seoul's commitment to nuclear non-proliferation. South Korea plans to secure low-enriched uranium at levels below 20% to fuel the nuclear-powered submarines, we said, stressing that highly enriched uranium is not under consideration. And that's an important point, because the highly enriched uranium would be easily converted to use in nuclear weapons. A working level U.S. delegation is expected to visit South Korea early next year to hold consultations on implementing the agreements outlined in the joint fact sheet, he added. Under a bilateral nuclear accord with the U.S., South Korea is largely prohibited from enriching its own uranium. It must import all of its low-enriched uranium. So South Korea currently has a number of nuclear power stations, power reactors, and a significant portion of South Korea's electricity is produced at these nuclear power plants. But it has to import all of its uranium. It's not allowed to enrich uranium on its own currently. Calling uranium supply an issue that requires strategic cooperation, we added that Seoul and Washington have agreed to move discussions forward quickly and to review progress through high-level meetings sometime next year. During his trip to U.S., we also exchanged views on the security situation on the Korean Peninsula and explored ways to resume stalled talks with North Korea. We said he met UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in New York to discuss ways to promote peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. Asked about the prospects of resuming dialogue with Pyongyang, he said Seoul would continue diplomatic efforts whenever opportunities arise. And as I've said, I think they're trying to manufacture these opportunities by using the fact that the military demarcation line is very unclear right now, and so they're trying to engage North Korea in talks on sort of defining that line again. And then, of course, once North Korea comes to the table, then they can talk about a whole bunch of other stuff. But so far, North Korea is refusing. His visit to Canada focused on strengthening security and defense industry cooperation, including promoting South Korea's advanced shipbuilding capabilities for Canada's patrol submarine program, which aims to procure up to 12 diesel-powered submarines. So Canada is not even thinking of having a nuclear-powered submarine. During a stop in Japan, we met with Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi to discuss maintaining stable bilateral relations. That's always a that's a that's always a hard sell between Korea and Japan. And coordinating efforts for peace on the Korean Peninsula, especially with the leftist president. I think more so than the Conservative Party, the leftists are more apt to uh, exploit the Korean people's negative emotions towards Japan. He also likely coordinated the agenda for Lee's anticipated summit with Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, with consultations underway for Lee's visit to Japan next month. Asked whether the two sides discussed Takaichi's renewed claims over South Korea's easternmost islet of Tokto, we remained cautious, saying only that they broadly agreed on the need to further develop their partnership. Yeah, those rocks out there, in the body of water between Korea and Japan, which shall go unnamed. Yeah, these rocks out there. Well, it's more than rocks. It's actually a bunch of. I think it's two islands anyway. And here, let me show you what we're dealing with here. It's. I've always thought it's really. Um, maybe I guess I have to use a K. Uh, Okay, maybe let's try it. Oko Island. There we go. Yeah, here we go. This is what we're dealing with here. So you can see it's just, I mean, I once suggested to a Korean, I guess more than one Korean was standing around there, say, why don't you just bomb these things and so that they, no longer exist above the sea level? And they were very offended. But it would seem though that I mean, why should two countries fight over something like this? Right? Uh, yeah. Anyway, that's what they're doing. This is causing all those problems. Of course, anytime you have a territorial issue like this, it's more than just the territory. It's the rights to the surrounding mineral deposits in the sea bed, plus the fishing rights and all that kind of stuff. The exclusive economic zone that surrounds any kind of rock or anything that sticks above the sea level. In Japan, actually, they have in Japan, I can't remember the name of it right now. Japan actually has a uh, south, in the Pacific, they have a rock that is just barely below the sea level. And so they built something on it so that they could claim that this is okay, this is ours. And we have what is it, however many miles of exclusive economic zone surrounding that rock. They built I don't know, weather station or something on there. I can't remember the name of it right now. Yeah. Maybe I can remember it. Torishima. It's what is it called? No, Okino, Torishima. Here we go. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, I found it. Okay. So here's a YouTube video. Okino Torishima, the most expensive island, right, is a coral reef, geologically an atoll with two rocks enlarged with tetrapod cement structures. Just, just for your edification. Yeah. Okay. And this is it. This is it. You see, this is it. This is it here. And let's see if they have a map. Map. Okay, well, it's not coming up. Oh, yeah, okay. And let's see if I can zoom out on this. How do I zoom out on this? How do I zoom out on this? It doesn't zoom. It doesn't zoom. Okay. All right. Anyway, so countries are always trying to find new territory because then that gives them uh, more ocean than they do now. So, and when sometimes there's an underground volcano that erupts and it rises above the sea level, and the country that is closest to it will claim it and stuff like that. Okay. All right. So let's see here. Okay. Oh no! I just erased all of that I had prepared. Let's see here. If I can get those back. Okay. And so also here, um, another news also related to the nuclear submarine. This is probably coincidental, I don't know, but the one U.S. nuclear powered submarine is now visiting Busan, and this is the first time that there's been such a visit in several months. This docked at the Busan Naval Operations Base on Tuesday, and this arrived to load military supplies and allow crew rest. The visit is intended to help strengthen exchanges and cooperation between South Korea and U.S. So they just arrived, I guess, to let the crew celebrate Christmas on land. And first visit by a U.S. nuclear powered submarine to South Korea in about 10 months, so forth and so forth. And this one is 6,300 tons. So I think, what was it? The North Korean one was what, 8,700? So this is smaller than what North Korea claims that it is building. So, All right, let's see here. Okay, let's go to Breitbart and see what. Or no, let's go to Newsmax. I don't even like Breitbart anymore. Okay. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. It looks like, okay, well, it looks like Newsmax is not going to cooperate with me. I was able to get it yesterday, or I guess we're stuck. Well, let's go to Epic Times. Okay. Okay. 5 million Christmas lights illuminate 19th century Ohio grist mill. Okay, wow, that is quite a light show there. Yeah. And this is something that we don't see in the Korea or uh, other Asian countries, these light shows. Yeah. And I guess, one of the purposes for the light show is to sort of illuminate the dark, because this is the darkest time of year. Um, and especially in the northern states in America, you got long nights there. So yeah, it helps people from getting depressed and stuff like that. Christmas isn't about more, it's about God choosing less. No, I don't think I like that headline. But anyway, bringing Christmas cheer to Americans in disaster recovery zones, and 190 dogs rescued from flooded village in Alaska. Okay. All right. North Korean Kim watches long-range missile test. Baby is born after the rarest of pregnancies. Okay. Let's not go there. All right. Okay. Someone won $1.817 billion lottery jackpot. Okay, well, good luck with that. Of course, that is the annuity value, and I'm sure the cash value is about half that. And then again, half of that half will go to taxes. So yeah, what is that about? Maybe $400 million that they're actually going to get, maybe. Okay. And Hawaii can charge cruise passengers a climate tax. Okay. Uh, Former CIA operative Michael Waller, intelligence agencies were turned into tools of the deep state. One-on-one with Steve Lance. Is this a? Well, that's a video, so I cannot go there. Okay. All right. And who is this lady here? This looks like Mrs. Shi, who I think was on the King's Report once. Yes. How Minnesota Nice progressive politics paved the way for Somali fraud. Yes, that's quite a situation there, isn't it? And how China's rare earth stronghold is unleashing American innovation. Yes, that's going to be good. That the American innovation is going to overcome that stronghold, that monopoly that they have. Why Florida leads the nation in cooperating with ICE enforcement. I think we talked about this. We didn't actually look at it last time. Okay, let's take a look at just a few paragraphs of this. Why is it that Florida leads the nation in cooperating with ICE? Yeah, okay. Tallahassee, as federal agents conduct immigration enforcement operations around the country, protests often erupt, at times involving violent attacks. Some high-profile Democrat politicians have urged their followers to fight back against law enforcement officers as they seek to arrest illegal immigrants. In Florida, by contrast, the removal of illegal immigrants mostly moves along peacefully, even as the state leads the nation in cooperating with federal immigration enforcement efforts. A state official and a top federal immigration office official told the Epoch Times. And what may surprise some is that it's a Democrat, excuse me here, appointed by Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis, who's leading the state's collaboration with federal agencies. As executive director of the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, a big part of Dave Kerner's mission has become capturing and removing illegal immigrants from the Sunshine State. And under his leadership, the state's effort to assist federal law enforcement agencies is setting records, a report from Immigration and Customs Enforcement shows. Since late March, 7,361 people have been arrested on collaborative immigration enforcement operations, according to Kerner. Texas is second in number of agencies collaborating with the federal immigration enforcement. Only a few states don't have any law enforcement agencies with existing or pending agreements to help with federal immigration enforcement, ICE records show. Still, as successful as Florida's collaboration has been in the eyes of law enforcement officials, the job of removing illegal immigrants from the state has no clear end in sight. But give us a little time, said Jeffrey Denise, Chief Patrol Agent with the Border Patrol's Miami sector. Denise oversees border security operations between the ports of entry across about 187,000 square miles, including 1,279 miles of Florida shoreline along the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of America. About 1.1 million illegal immigrants told federal officials that they had a sponsor in Florida and would be headed there, he said. There's no way to know how many of those actually made it to the state, according to Denise. Is that Denise or Dennis? Dennis? I'm going to stick with Denise. Then there are the so-called gotaways, the unknown millions of people who crossed the border illegally and evaded capture. About 45% of illegal immigrants arrested in Florida are gotaways, Kerner said. So there is no way to know exactly how many of them make their home in the state. It's generally assumed that most gotaways avoided Border Patrol because of a criminal past in another country or an intention to break other laws here in the United States, Kerner and Denise told the Epoch Times. Now, with Kerner orchestrating Florida's effort, law enforcement agencies in all 67 of the state's counties collaborate with federal operations to remove illegal immigrants. And troopers with Florida Highway Patrol and agency Kerner manages work daily with officers from both ICE and Customs and Border Protection. And there's someone there being escorted away. It was October of 2025. Okay. Florida's help with immigration enforcement sharply contrasts with what federal agents have been experiencing in some other areas of the country. I've lived all over the nation from California to Washington State to Washington, D.C. to Texas. Florida does it the best right now. I've never seen such a harmonious relationship, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right. That I guess is well. I guess it's good news that we're able to do it peacefully. Yeah. Well, certainly America needs to know who is here, but again, I want to state my position that if a person is in the United States and is contributing to U.S. society and the U.S. economy, such as being gainfully employed somehow and paying their taxes. So, and some illegal immigrants even have their own businesses. Of course, they use other people's names, but they have their own. They basically operate their own businesses. And I see no need for such people to be deported. I think that the U.S. needs people, for one thing, to pay taxes. We don't want to. What are we deporting taxpayers for, right? If someone's paying taxes, that's great. But I do think that those people can be made legal on the condition that they have not committed and will not commit serious felonies, a serious felony. Number two, that they do not have a path to citizenship. Citizenship only is something that can be obtained by someone who comes to the country legally. And number three is that they cannot invite their relatives. Normally, when someone has a green card, they can invite relatives, but in this case, people who are legalized in the way that I'm talking about right now should not be allowed to invite relatives. So those are my three conditions. So if I were, king of the world, those would be the three conditions that I would set for people who are established in American society and economy. I would say those are they either have a job or they have a business. They've been paying taxes and stuff. So, whether it's in their name or in someone else's name, they've been paying taxes and have not committed a serious felony. I think that those kinds of people we can keep. And the reason for this is that we bear at least some responsibility for their being here. Okay, we failed to protect our own border. And you will say, the Democrats, yeah, but it's still, even if you're a Republican and you didn't vote for this, you didn't vote for Biden, you didn't vote for Obama or any of the other presidents that allowed all these people to come in, still, as a whole, and this is what Principle describes as the collective sin, right? So we all bear a collective responsibility for their being here in the first place. So we need to take some responsibility for that. But obviously, if someone is here and they've committed a crime, a felony, that is I'm not talking about jaywalking or anything like that, but a felony, and a serious felony. I think it has to be a serious felony because recently some felonies are very, very light. shall we say, or not serious, but a serious felony of some sort, and a law can describe exactly what that means. But if they haven't committed a serious felony, and if they're not relying on welfare, okay, if they're relying on welfare, then yeah, don't be here. Don't come to pick up welfare checks. You got to be able to support yourself. And so that is my opinion, which I've stated many times on the King's Report. I think I've been pretty consistent on that. All right, so let's see here. Okay, where else can we go? I guess we have to go back to Breitbart. Okay, let's go back to Breitbart. Okay. Trump takes calls from families tracking Santa and service members. This Santa myth. Um, I think I mentioned that, the modern Santa, what we generally think of as Santa is basically creation of the Coca-Cola company in the early 20th century. Of course, there was Santa before that also, but it was different. It was different before that. I think in many cases, Santa was actually skinny, most cases, in fact. But this, bearded, roly-poly, obese Santa is the product of a Coca-Cola. I think also the whole reindeer thing may also maybe as well. But Coca-Cola wanted a way to sell their drink in the wintertime as well as in the summertime, and so they came up with this, which they did a pretty good job in terms of marketing, I must say. So anyway, this whole sort of Santa myth. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Political frames European Christmas celebrations as far-right spectacle. Of course, yeah. Politics never takes a rest, never takes a holiday. Uh, oh yeah, I wanted to mention, I was going to do this earlier, but the whole this see where am I? Okay. The GDP came out as 4.3%, I think, on Wednesday, and you may have thought it strange. I thought it strange because a lot of people are not doing well in this economy. So how is it that the GDP came out much higher than what was expected, or what people generally feel? 4.3%, significantly higher than what was expected. And the best explanation I've seen so far is that this is due to AI, artificial intelligence investments. That there's a lot of capital investment going into the AI sort of industry, I guess you can call it, building data centers and developing AI stuff, and that this is the reason for that. And most of us are not really feeling that at all, are we? So it's interesting. The whole worldwide financial system is changing right now. It's evolving very much, and of course, the price of a gold and silver is really exploding now. It's above $70 an ounce, which a year ago would have seemed like a distant future. Uh, we were looking at, what is it, $30, $40, and now all of a sudden it's gone up more than $70, and some people are talking about $100 silver. And gold also is at an all-time high of $4,400, and looks like it may be going higher. And of course, some of that is due to China. Yes, China is trying to decouple itself from America so that in the event that it invades Taiwan, it is expecting that it will be subject to economic sanctions, that the United States will freeze its assets and so forth. And so they're trying to reduce their holdings of U.S. Debt and increase their holdings of gold, and also because the BRICS have come up with what they call the unit, and this is the name that they're giving to their new common currency. And the unit is supported back to 60% by the currencies of the BRICS members, and then 40% gold is what I've read. So, of course, my question then is, okay, so who's going to store the gold? Because when you have, this is the problem with gold. It has to be stored somewhere by someone that everybody trusts. Right? And also, it has to be verified. And that's another thing. How do you you get a yellow brick, all right? You got a yellow brick, and from a distance, it looks like gold. Or even if you're holding it, it has the right weight. Even if you put it on a scale, it has the right weight. Still, verifying gold is actually quite difficult. How do you know that it's actually gold? Of course, if you go to gold shops, they have these machines that use some sort of a microwave to verify. But even that, I think I'm told is not 100%. So anyway, good luck to them on that. But the U.S. dollar, though, is still pretty dominant in world financial. But it is the world's financial system is certainly changing. No denying that. And this is one way. The BRICS are one aspect of that situation. Excuse me. All right, gotta go. I will see you tomorrow. So Merry Christmas again. Have a happy holidays and all that. And I'll see you tomorrow. And so yes, be safe, be safe, be safe, whatever you do. God bless, Godspeed. May his kingdom come quickly. I will see you tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and sign